everybody. Welcome to Jamie Wins. I'm glad that you guys are here with me again. This is Jen Amos, and I will let her introduce herself to you guys.
Part of the reason why I'm on her show today is to talk about my passion project, which is called the Filipino American Women Project. The short version is called TIFA, so kind of like your girlfriend named Tifa, but it's spelled TFAW. Ultimately, the goal for the Filipino American Women Project is to document more stories told by people who identify as female in America of Filipino descent. Yeah.
That's why I really want to interview Jen and put her on the show, just because there's so many Filipino American women everywhere, and maybe some of you even don't know that you're actually classified as one.
Right.
And so I wanted to ask Jen, how did you discover this project?
So I feel like this has kind of been a lifetime project for me. I didn't really explore my culture till I was in college. I was part of a Filipino organization at San Diego State called AB Samahan, so shout out to AB Samahan. I didn't realize that we had a lot of things going against us. I didn't know that we were discriminated against. I didn't know we were considered a minority. I didn't know a lot of these things. Uh-huh. And so I got really involved in college, and then I started to get involved even after college, and just kind of learn more. But what I found through my journey is that something just felt like it wasn't enough. What I was doing in the community, how I was helping, it didn't seem enough for me. And I think part of it was because I felt like I wasn't honoring who I was as a Filipino American woman. So fast forward to December 2016, I just thought, okay, well, if I do want to learn about being a Filipino American woman, where do I figure that out? So I started with Google, naturally as a millennial. I went with Google and I looked up Filipino American women. But basically I found Filipino American women being objectified on Google. Like it was they provided information like, oh, how to date a Filipino American woman, or why you should not
so
date
typical.
one. Yeah, why should
it's
you not?
It's always about bridal orders or dating.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Like
it's so insulting if I'm a Filipino American and I see that as the first thing that comes up when you do a Google search.
Yeah.
I'm not a possession. I'm not.
Exactly.
That's not my only worth. I can offer other things in the world.
Yeah, and then the other things I found on Google were politics, how we're not in American politics like at all. Like maybe at the lower levels, like maybe locally, but not in, like state or government or what have you. And so I thought, okay, well, most people would say, don't trust the internet. I was like, okay. So I decided to go to a library. Actually, I looked it up online. I went to the San Diego Public Library directory, and I decided to do a search of Filipino American women and what I can learn about myself and see if there's any resources for us. But I think when it comes to American history, there's probably about over 20,000 books. Naturally, that seems to make a lot of sense about American history. And then when it got to Filipino American history, it went down to 215. So just
Wow.
3 digits. It went from like 5 digits to 3 digits. And then I decided to look up Filipino American women history. And to my surprise, I only found one book.
When?
Yeah, one book from the San Diego Public Library, and it was actually the memoir of a Filipino American woman as a nurse in World War II. But that was 70 years ago, and we haven't had something ever since. So that to me was upsetting because I'm not a mother yet, but for someone who's curious and wants to learn more about herself, it's amazing how little resources we have. And what I have found through interviewing a number of women throughout our Facebook Live show is typically if you do want to learn about your culture, you have to go to higher levels of education, like you have to go to college and maybe join a Filipino organization, or you have to become a scholar in it. It's interesting how you have to become like an expert in it in order to know. But for the everyday person, the everyday Filipino American woman that wants to learn about herself, there's not as much information. I think part of the reason why I struggled with like insecurity issues like most of my life and feeling like I wasn't good enough or kind of just being like immersing in other more dominant cultures, like the American culture being a big example. I think the reason why I just kind of blended in is because I didn't have as much resources to learn about who I am as a Filipino American woman. So with this passion project, it's not about, forcing people to learn about their culture or forcing them to learn our language, but it's more so celebrating us as Filipino American women, those who identify as female in America of Filipino descent. who just want to share their story. And we've done, I think, about 35 episodes since 2017, and we've interviewed anywhere from professionals to mothers to students to just amazing women, life coaches, engineers, nurses, just everything. And it's so beautiful to see that we are more than what Google and the library say about us. Filipino American women are a hidden gem, and this project is to celebrate them, so that for the women who watch it, hopefully they can embrace more of who they are, and also hopefully this will help the future generation of young Filipino American women who maybe are struggling. Maybe their parents are trying to force them to become a nurse or force them to, go down a certain path that they don't feel comfortable with. But when they hear these stories, they'll think to themselves, wow, I can be whatever I want to be.
Am I classified as a Filipino American? If I've been living here for 3 years, I was born and raised in the Philippines. I traveled the world. I lived in Australia, Spain, and then moved here.
Right.
I would like to believe that I am now a Filipino American woman, but as for the women watching right now, maybe they're wondering, like, am I a Filipino American? What is your classification?
Right. So, depending on who you're talking to, if you're talking to a scholar, if you're taking a college course, there are different definitions of what it means to be a Filipino American woman. I want to be very clear about that and not step on anyone's toes and have them think, no, that's not right. That's not what a Filipino American woman is. But for our specific project, you do identify as a female, not a male or a neutral gender. Like, you do identify as a female. You are currently in America, you're living here, or you have lived here. And then, of course, lastly, Filipino descent. So even if you have a quarter of Filipino descent in you, maybe you're a mestiza, if you identify with all three of those, you have a platform here to share your story. I consider you a Filipino American woman based on those standards for this passion project, yeah.
What are the normal struggles of a Filipino American woman? I would just think in my head, the first thing I would think about is identity clash or culture clash, because we're kind of like ambiguous. We're kind of in the middle, like, I'm Filipino, but I'm kind of American, I'm bilingual, and this and that. I think we lack a little bit of originality in terms of, because our culture is not so firmly planted yet. Because the Philippines is a baby country.
It really is.
Compared to other countries that have lived longer and they've, conquered kingdoms and different places. I mean, Philippines is still a very new country that's developing its own culture. So, in your opinion, what is the struggle normally?
I actually believe that a lot of our struggles are very universal. I think a lot of people can relate to what we go through. But I do think the common thing that a lot of us may share, and like I said, I always want to start by saying I'm not a scholar. I'm only telling you information based on the stories I've heard and even from my own personal experience. But I think part of our struggle is not realizing that we have a story to share. We go through the same things I'm sure most cultures do. Insecurity, that's a big thing.
Can I just say something about that? The insecurity, I think, especially if you haven't lived long in America, there's that insecurity with the English. You have to admit. I mean, even me, like, I speak okay English. I'm happy with the way I speak, but I still feel like I don't sound American enough, or I can't joke the American way because I have the humor in Tagalog in my head, but if I say it in English, it just sounds different and it doesn't have the same appeal, and I feel insecure, like, I can't pull off that joke. But there's always that insecurity that you're not American enough, but you're not Filipino enough, because Filipino humor is very different too. Especially now with the gay humor, that's the trend. And, and if you're not heavily immersed in that, you don't get it as well. So you're kind of like in this middle ground of like, where do I actually fit, but what box? You do experience some kind of like a misplacement.
I like that you bring that up because I think what you're trying to say, and I think that it is a big universal issue, is that we don't feel like we're good enough no matter where we go. Because if you kind of what you mentioned, the Philippines, it's still a baby. We've been colonized over and over.
So we've been trying to change and mold into some other culture. So we never really honed our own.
Exactly. Yeah,
We're kinda lost.
on top of that, there's what, thousands of islands with different cultures, different dialects.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we kind of do have this identity crisis. We do. And then
We
and then
do.
there's also the OFWs, like the overseas Filipino workers. And then there's the immigrants who do come to other countries such as America, like my parents. And then there are people such as myself who were born and raised as American. And I just think I do think the common theme is not good enough. You know, you don't feel good enough for your parents. You don't feel good enough for American society. You don't feel good enough in your own culture because you don't speak, like for me, I don't speak Tagalog. Technically, I'm supposed to speak 3 dialects because my parents are from different like parts of the Philippines.
But
I
do you
don't speak
understand
any.
Tagalog? Do you understand?
I understand it, but
Okay.
I'm not fully though. Like when my mom used to talk on the phone to her friends, I would kind of pick up when she would talk about me.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, for the most part, part of it kind of stems back to the relationship I had with my relatives growing up. But I actually became a self-loathing Filipino. I didn't want to learn about my culture. I actually disassociated for a very long time. And so this project is really celebrating where we all are at, not where society thinks we should be. You know?
I like that.
Yeah, because there's I've had a number of women. I want to give a shout out to all the women who have actually shared their story. It's very courageous of you, very commendable that you did that. But there's so many women still who feel like they don't have a story. They think their life isn't exciting enough,
Yes.
or whatever.
There's that feeling where, oh, my story wouldn't matter, or my
Yeah.
story is just typical like other people's
Exactly,
story. But
yeah.
I don't believe that because it's unique.
Yeah.
It's your story.
Exactly. And it doesn't help when we allow other people to share our stories. We allow scholars, we allow organizations, we allow our family, we allow our spouses. We allow other people to define us. And I think part of that is because we love being, generally speaking and historically, we're the matriarch of the family. We're the ones working behind the scenes. And so, yeah, part of that doesn't require being vocal. It's about what can I provide for my kids? What can I provide for my spouse? What can I provide for my family? And don't get me wrong, I think that's also very commendable. I eventually want to be a stay-at-home mom, you know? But that's not the only story. Because there's people like you know?
Yes. That's why I'm fixing my hair. It's because there's other types of
Yeah.
women that are Filipinas, like such as myself,
Yes,
that want
yeah.
different things. And
Yes.
it's not bad if you want different
Yes.
things. I mean, if you chose that path of motherhood and stay at home and
Yes.
providing,
Yeah.
it's great. But if you want to thrive and travel the world
Yeah.
and follow your dreams and be independent, it's
Yeah.
fine too. There's other options. And
Exactly.
there shouldn't be judgment. We're not supposed to be placed in a box where the society wants us to be this.
Yes.
And that's the only path.
Generally, we would hope that our family gives us that kind of educates that self-confidence in us so that we can go out there and celebrate all that we are. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen all the time. My mom, she was a provider. She didn't have time to sit down and say, hey, Jennifer, this is where I came from. This is our story. No, she was just trying to make sure there was food on the table. You know, she worked overtime. She picked up a part-time job sometimes, you know, to raise 3 young kids. Like we all were under 11 when we lost my dad. So do I blame her for not educating me on my culture? Like, no. My mom did enough for me. You know, my mom did a tremendous job, you know, raising it. I get emotional just thinking about it. But now that I'm aware of this, it's my job to find those answers. This is my story. This is not her story. Her story, like now she's just so happy to see that, you know, we're all adult kids, or adults. And we all can, you know, pay our own bills, and, you know, we're all like 2 out of 3 of us are engaged, you know, like, you know, her story was to just make sure that we were able to make it as adults. Now it's my story. It's my time to you know, finish the rest, you know, to figure out what does it mean to be this woman, you know, who was actually born in Japan on American soil, traveled around a lot as a young girl, and then eventually settled in San Diego, didn't know anything about her language. Like, who am I? And I think part of this passion project is highlighting the fact that we all have such incredibly different backgrounds and different stories, and
Which is what makes it interesting.
Exactly. And it's about celebrating it because,
Yes.
and making it accessible, you know, rather than, the reason why we chose to do this on Facebook Live is so that people can just watch on their phones. You know,
Exactly.
it's like, oh, let me learn about myself. Let me go on my phone. But if we didn't have this today, it'd still be the traditional, like, oh, let me try to go find something in the library, or let me try to, go to higher levels of education, let me go to college, let me become a scholar. Or, I mean, of course, if you did get it from home, like, that's amazing. That's amazing if your parents, educated you about your history. But for everyone else, I just hope that with the Filipino American Woman Project, this is just another resource for you to learn who you are and celebrate who you are and own it. Own it. Write your own story.
Own it!
Yeah. So,
Two
yeah.
words, baby.
Just
own
own
it.
it. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I salute your project just because it's shedding light to people who are misplaced
Yes.
and want to know more. You're right.
Yes.
There's not enough resources. There's not enough classification.
Yes. Yeah.
And it just feels like, you also feel like, oh, I belong somewhere. There's this community
Yes.
of women
Yes.
who can identify with my insecurities and my
Yes.
cultural barriers and
Yes,
my identity crisis. So how can they follow this project?
Yeah, well, you can go on Facebook and search the Filipino American Woman Project. The website is thefilipinoamericanwomanproject.com. Or you could even just search me up, Jen Amos. That's Jenamos. My Facebook profile is actually public, so you can find my profile there and it'll have the link to the Filipino American Woman Project. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, and you can email us as well.
I just got drawn to this woman just because of this strong passion that she has. I feel her energy. I feel that she's so into this project, and it's for a good cause.
Yeah.
So thank you, Jen.
Of course. Well,
Thanks
it's
for
a pleasure.
sharing.
Thanks, Jamie.
Sharing your passion project, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
I'm hoping that you'll get more resources and sponsorships, and
Yes.
a lot of women hopefully
Yeah.
support this cause just because it's very identifiable.
If you do identify as a woman in America of Filipino descent, or maybe you did live here for a good portion of your life and you decided to live somewhere else, we would love for you to share your story. I do everything I can to make sure you feel, safe and confident and excited to share your story.
Yes, it would be nice. I encourage women to share their stories because you'll never know who you're going to inspire.
Yes.
So go ahead and share.
Yes.
It's enlightening.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie.
Jen.
Yay!
I hope you guys enjoyed listening today. To all you Filipino American women out there, you're not alone. You have two here with you.
Yes.
And there's more out there.
Yes.
We encourage you to, of course, visit Jen's page.
Awesome.
I'll see you guys again next time. Thank you for listening.
Thanks
and
for
if you
listening.
like this video, please give it a thumbs up,
Yes.
share, comment. If you have questions for me and Jen, comment away and we'll respond to you. I'll see you again very, very soon. And remember, Jamie wins. So can you. Bye.
Bye, guys.